When we were finalizing the renovations for our future marital home, my fiancé insisted on reserving one bedroom for his personal secretary. The architect froze mid-sentence. Wait, wasn't that supposed to be Ms. Voss's home dance studio? He turned to his secretary. Lila will be staying here full-time from now on. That same afternoon, I signed the 3-year exchange offer with the Paris Opera Ballet. Today was the day we'd scheduled to sign off on the final renovation plans for the house. Kaylin Hale was running late. The architect stood in the doorway of that sunlit room, blueprints in hand, voice bright with excitement. Ms. Voss, this room has the best natural light in the entire house. You mentioned wanting a home dance studio. So I reworked the layout for the mirror wall and ballet bar specifically. The morning light will be absolutely perfect for your warm-ups. I stood by the door, holding 2 wood floor samples, one pale, with fine grain, the other deeper, richer in tone. I'd been comparing them for minutes, and before I could speak, footsteps sounded from the entrance. Kaylin had arrived. Layla Maeve was right behind him, arms stacked with files, wearing a crisp white blouse and knee-length skirt, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Looking soft and unassuming, the architect spotted Kaylin and hurried over with the plans. Mr. Hale, perfect timing. Take a look. We've been designing this south-facing room as the dance studio. The mirror wall, flooring, storage are all. Kaylin glanced down at the blueprints. His finger tapped lightly on the space marked for my studio. Turn this into a guest bedroom. The architect, clearly thinking he'd misheard, glanced at me first before asking hesitantly, Mr. Hale, we already planned the guest room next to the housekeeper's quarters. That room's too small, and the light is terrible. Kaylin said flatly. The company is going public soon. Lila and I will be working late constantly. It's not safe for her to commute home at that hour. Layla's eyes flickered to me, a faint, embarrassed flush rising to her cheeks. Ilara, my apartment is so far from the office. Before I could reply, Kaylin cut her off. Just stay here. You don't need to ask her permission. The air went still. I stared down at the floor samples in my hand. And suddenly the wood grain blurred before my eyes. I'd picked out this room for months. I'd revised the mirror wall placement 3 times. I'd adjusted the bar height to match my exact preference. I'd even specially ordered the sprung dance floor. The kind perfect for dancing barefoot. Kaylin had laughed at me back then, saying I was putting more care into a dance studio than he put into signing $1 million contracts. I'd laughed too, told him it was different. This was a space I'd use every single day. Fine, he'd said. Tear it apart and rebuild it however you want. I'd actually believed him. The architect still stood there, stunned. I gripped the edge of the wood samples so tight the corner dug into my palm. Kaylin finally seemed to remember I was there. Lifting his eyes to me, he held my gaze for 2 seconds, then looked at the samples in my hand. In one smooth motion, he plucked them from my grasp and set them on the table. We can figure out a dance studio later. Your schedule at the company is so flexible. You can practice anywhere. Later. I looked at him, and a bitter laugh rose in my throat. He always said later. Later he'd make up for missing my opening night. Later he'd take me to see the northern lights. Later we'd have our wedding. But every later was just something he could push aside for something more important right now. Layla, clearly sensing the tension, pressed her lips together and spoke softly. Ilara, don't get the wrong idea. It's just a busy period for the project. Kaylin is just looking out for me. It's not. I cut her off before she could finish. Change it then. My own voice sounded foreign to my ears. I turned and walked away. As I passed Kaylin, he reached for my wrist. The second his fingers brushed my skin, I flinched away. He froze, clearly surprised I'd dodged him. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard the architect's careful voice. So, Mr. Hale, we'll redraw the plans for this room as a guest bedroom. Kaylin didn't answer right away. 2 seconds passed before I heard his low, quiet HM. The elevator doors slid shut. I looked down at my palm. red and raw from gripping the wood samples so hard. It didn't hurt. It just felt hollow. My phone buzzed. It was the director of my ballet company. Last day to sign the Paris exchange offer today. You still coming? I stared at the text for 3 seconds. I replied with one word. Yes. The rehearsal studio was empty that afternoon. Sunlight shattered across the mirror wall in shards of white. I laced up my pointe shoes, and before signing the papers, I stood at the bar and stretched for 10 minutes. My ankle ached. My calf muscles tight. The company director stood beside me with the contract, watching for a moment before speaking. Ilara, this is 3 years in Paris. Not a short exchange. Once you sign, the process is final. Are you sure? I lowered my leg from the bar, took the pen, and signed my name on the last page. I'm sure. She fell silent for a moment, sensing my mood. She rarely asked personal questions, but she did now. Did you talk this over with Kaylin? I clicked the pen closed and smiled faintly. This is my decision. She looked at me for 2 seconds, then nodded and filed away the papers. Rehearsal ended at dusk. I sat alone in the locker room peeling the toe tape off my feet. The adhesive had been on so long it pulled at my skin. A sharp, stinging pain. I stared at the red indent across the top of my foot, and suddenly I remembered the first time Kaylin had watched me peel off my tape. He'd cursed under his breath. Said it was insane that dancing hurt this bad. I'd laughed and called him dramatic. He'd said I should quit. I'd told him I couldn't. He'd said then he'd build me a home dance studio, so at least I could practice somewhere comfortable. Maybe he'd meant it back then, but promises made in the heat of infatuation are the first to turn cold. I got back to the apartment just after 9. The living room was dark. Kaylin had been coming home late every night for the past 2 weeks, rushing to get the company ready for its IPO. I used to wait for him on the couch, leave a light on in the living room. Not tonight. I showered, blow-dried my hair, and tucked a copy of the Paris exchange contract into a book, sliding it into the second drawer of my desk. I don't know how much time passed before the bedroom door opened. The mattress dipped beside me. Kaylin leaned over, one hand braced on either side of me, the familiar scent of alcohol and warm skin wrapping around me as he leaned in to kiss me. Then I smelled it. Faint, sweet floral perfume, cloying and thick, clinging to his collar, to his breath when he leaned close. I turned my face away and pressed my palm to his chest. Who were you with tonight? Kaylin frowned, clearly annoyed at the question right now. He grabbed my wrist, voice tight with exhaustion. Just a work event. Don't overthink this. He leaned in to kiss me again. This time I pushed him away. It wasn't hard, but he stopped anyway. In the dim light, he stared at me for 2 seconds, his voice turning cold. Ilara Voss. What is wrong with you tonight? I suddenly had nothing to say. My silence frayed his patience. He tugged at his collar and muttered. You're still mad about the dance studio, aren't you? No, I said, turning my back to him. I'm just tired. Silence for 2 seconds. I could feel him staring at my back. Finally, he laughed, cold and sharp. Fine. The mattress lifted. He grabbed his coat and walked out. I closed my eyes, my fingers twisting tight in the sheets. I'd always known Kaylin had a temper. He was the spoiled, untouchable second son of the Hale family, arrogant and entitled. But the first time he'd kissed me, he'd pressed his forehead to mine and said, Ilara, I'll never lose my temper with you. Now the bedroom door slammed shut behind him. The sound was so loud the bedside lamp rattled. Kaylin had fallen for me at first sight. Our parents had tried to set us up, and Kaylin had refused to go. Then his parents had dragged him to my ballet performance. After the show, he'd leaned against the wall outside my dressing room waiting for me. I'd already taken off my stage makeup, changed into regular clothes. Kaylin had clicked his tongue. You're Ilara Voss. My parents told me to drive you home. Later I'd asked him why he'd looked so annoyed that first day. He'd said, it was the first time I'd ever seen a girl that beautiful. I was mad I hadn't listened to my parents sooner. I could have met you earlier, brought you home sooner. Then Kaylin had decided to make it on his own. no family money. His first office was a rundown building in the historic district, scheduled for demolition. He'd grovel to clients during the day, rewrite proposals all night, going 2 weeks without a full night's sleep. One night, Cale Rayner had thrown him a party. Said he was introducing Kaylin to connections. Really, it was just a bunch of rich guys drinking and playing cards, waiting to see how long the golden boy of the Hale family would last. The second I walked in, the room went quiet. No one had expected the untouchable Kaylin Hale to settle down, to actually be serious about a girl. Cale was the first to recover, leaning back on the couch and whistling. Nice, Kaylin, bringing your girl to a business meet. You that protective already? Someone else laughed. This one's prettier than all your previous flings. Kaylin, isn't your new girl a ballerina? Let's see her dance for us. The room erupted in laughter, jeers and teasing bouncing off the walls. That's how they talked in that circle, half joke, half test. I was about to smooth it over when Kaylin set his glass down on the table hard enough to make the ice rattle. The room went dead silent. He leaned back on the couch, the smile fading from his face. Are you all done? Cale raised an eyebrow, ready to push it. Come on, Kaylin, we're just saying you've got good taste. Kaylin's gaze was cold as ice as he swept it across the room. She's my girlfriend, not entertainment for you to gawk at. Silence. Then someone laughed. Reckless. Come on. We're not wrong. Elara doesn't look like the type to rough it. You're already killing yourself building this company. You really want to add pampering such a high-maintenance woman to the list. Kaylin wasn't smiling at all now. He tilted his head, voice sharp and cold. She doesn't have to do a single thing. All she has to do is be with me. You don't get to pass judgment on her. No one said a word. I stared at him. The light hit the side of his face, his features sharp and unyielding. Cale laughed, breaking the tension. All right, we're out of line. Kaylin's serious about this one. Can't even joke about it. The others mumbled apologies, said it was just a joke. Kaylin ignored them. He turned to me, his voice softening immediately. Sit here. He pulled me down beside him, pushed the glass of wine away from me and set a glass of water in front of me instead. Don't listen to them. None of them know how to talk to people. I laughed a little. He stared at me, checking I wasn't upset, then squeezed my fingertips lightly. It was a small, gentle touch, loud with unapologetic favor. Back then, Kaylin hadn't learned to hide his feelings yet. He was all sharp edges and raw feeling. If he loved you out loud. And he wouldn't let anyone disrespect you. Not even a little. When did that change? It started 2 years ago, when Lila Maeve joined his company. She was one of the students the Hale family had funded through college, the hardest working of all of them. Poor, top of her class. When she graduated, she turned down stable job offers to show up at Kaylin's office again and again with her resume. The first time he turned her down, she'd said, "Reed, Mr. Hale, I don't want the easy path. You built your company from scratch. I want to try that too." Back then, Kaylin had rolled his eyes, annoyed at how stubborn she was, annoyed she couldn't get a spreadsheet right. But Lila never gave up. She pulled all-nighters rewriting proposals. She cried when he yelled at her, then showed up to work on time the next day. Kaylin had that same fire. Back when he was building his company, he'd wanted to prove he was more than just a Hale, prove he was better than his older brother. And when Lila looked at him, she had that same fire in her eyes. After that, he started talking about her more and more. He'd buy her gifts to reward her for a good job. He'd miss my first international performance because he didn't trust Lila to go to a client dinner alone. The sheets were cold beside me. I remembered a post I'd seen online once. Someone asked, "How did you know your partner didn't love you anymore?" The top reply said, "Because I'd seen what it looked like when he did." I woke up to an empty room. I got ready, sat at the kitchen table scrolling through Instagram. The first post was Lila's, from the night before. A photo of the floor-to-ceiling windows at the top of the office building. Dark night outside. Half a desk reflected in the glass. 2 coffee cups sat on the desk, one half empty. The caption was one line. I have to work twice as hard to deserve to stand by your side. All of Kaylin's friends had liked it. One had commented, "Take good care of Kaylin." Lila had replied with an emoji. Said I will. I stared at the screen until the milk in my cup went cold. I liked the post. Then I pulled up the architect's chat. Please cancel the order for the ballet bar and the full mirror wall. I sent the message. Then drank the cold milk. At 10:30. The official confirmation from Paris arrived in my inbox, along with onboarding paperwork and housing arrangements. The director texted me, "Ilara, Giselle on the 18th next month will be your final performance with us. You'll wrap all paperwork right after. Fly out the morning of the 19th. That works," I replied. "Works for me. Great. Come to the company whenever you're ready to start closed rehearsals." I walked into the closet. Most of the clothes in there were things Kaylin had bought me over the years: couture gowns, jewelry sets, organized by color and season. I didn't look at any of it. I walked to the back drawer, packed a few leotards, 2 pairs of broke neon-point shoes, and a handful of everyday clothes. It wasn't much. It didn't even fill one bag. When you decide to leave, you realize how little actually belongs to you. The doorbell rang. It was a same-day delivery driver. "Ms. Voss, food ordered for you by Mr. Hale." He handed me an insulated food carrier. It was from that famous upscale bistro downtown. The one with the months-long wait list. Back when I'd finish rehearsals late, Kaylin would always stop there and bring me a container of creamy chicken consommé. Before I could set it down, Kaylin called, "Got it. Eat it while it's hot. I have a meeting this afternoon. But I'll come home early tonight. I was out of line last night. If you want the dance studio back, I'll tell the architect to change the plans again. Stop being mad, okay?" I stared at the gold logo on the food carrier. "Don't change it," I said quietly. "A guest room is fine." Silence on the other end. "Ilara," Kaylin said, voice cold with irritation. "I'm already compromising here." That's what he thought. He thought he was backing down. That I should be grateful. That I should take the olive branch like I always did. "Not this time. I'm serious," I said, my voice steady. "A guest room is more practical. Keep the plans the way you decided." I hung up before he could reply, and put the entire unopened food carrier in the back of the fridge. I didn't expect the Paris team to arrive so soon. After group rehearsal, the director pulled me into the small theater. The lead agent from Paris was here, she said, and wanted to meet me. I pushed the door open. A man stood with his back to me, looking up at the stage lights. He was tall, in a perfectly tailored black suit, broad-shouldered, the overhead light cutting a sharp line across his profile. The 2 stagehands moving props slowed down when they saw him. One of them, holding a costume bag, whispered to her friend, "Oh my God. Agents look like that." The other tugged her arm. Face red. "Stop staring. Someone that hot is way out of our league." I paused. He heard the door open and turned around. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, devastatingly handsome, with a lazy, unimpressed look like nothing in the world could hold his attention for long. The director smiled. "Ilara, this is Silas Thorne, lead agent for the Paris program." "Silas, this is Ilara Voss." Silas looked me over. Tone dry and playful. "Word is you're the best this company has to offer. Let's hope that's not just empty praise." I held out my hand. Actions speak louder than words for a dancer. "I'll let my performance do the talking." He raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised, and shook my hand. After that, when I rehearsed, Silas would sit in the front row, long legs crossed, twisting a pen between his fingers, whispering to the director now and then. When I finished, he said, slow and easy, "Stunning. I'm talking about your performance. It's impossible to look away." I'd never gotten such a blunt compliment from someone like him. My heart skipped a beat. That day, my old ankle injury flared up. I sat alone in the dressing room peeling off my toe tape when there was a soft knock on the door. Silas leaned in the doorway, holding a bag of ice packs. He sat down and wrapped his hand around my injured ankle. casual as anything. Ilara. Do all ballerinas treat their bodies this badly? The warmth of his hand made me flinch, and I tried to pull my foot back. He pressed the ice pack to my ankle. Neither of us said anything. After that, we got closer. A few afternoons later, I walked out of the rehearsal studio and saw Kaylin standing by the entrance. Silas was leaning on the railing a few feet away, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, holding my coat. The two men stood a short distance apart, one cold and furious, the other smiling faintly. I paused. Kaylin walked over first, voice low and tight. Ilara, we need to talk. Before I could reply, Silas draped my coat over my shoulders, his fingertips brushing my cold hand. Tone lazy and warm. Put this on first. You're freezing. Kaylin's face went dark. He stared at Silas's hand on my shoulder, eyes cold as ice. Take your hand off her. Silas acted like he hadn't heard. He pulled the coat tight around me, then looked up at Kaylin. Slow and sharp. Are you talking to me, Mr. Hale? Kaylin stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. She's my girlfriend. Silas laughed. Is she? Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like she wants to be. The air went tight. I stood between them, exhausted. Kaylin, stung by the comment, reached for my arm. Ilara, come with me. I didn't move. His hand hung in the air, shock flashing across his face. He'd never expected me to humiliate him in front of someone else. Kaylin, I said, looking up at him. Voice quiet. What do you want to talk about? His eyes were fixed on my face. When did you get so close to him? You've been ignoring my calls, ignoring my texts. Is this why? I stared at him, and I almost laughed. Even now. His first reaction was to accuse me, to blame another man. This has nothing to do with Silas, I said, pulling the coat tighter. I just have nothing to say to you. Kaylin's face got darker. This is still about the dance studio. I already said I'd change it back. What more do you want? Silas leaned against the railing and clicked his tongue softly. Mr. Hale, is that really how you apologize to someone? Kaylin spun around, his gaze cold enough to freeze water. This doesn't concern you. Can you leave us alone while I talk to my girlfriend? Kaylin. He turned back to me. I looked him dead in the eye. Do you really still think I'm throwing a fit over a room? His breath caught. My voice was so calm. It froze the anger right out of him. We're done. We're breaking up. The emotion drained from his face. Slow and terrible. First anger, then shock, then a raw, unmasked panic. Ilara. His voice dropped, soft and pleading, but I didn't want to hear it. Go. I said. I need to get changed. He stood there, frozen. After a long time, he said, low and tight. Fine. Ilara, don't regret this. I didn't reply. I didn't look up until his footsteps faded down the hall. Then I let go of the coat, my fingers shaking. Silas stood beside me. Quiet. The hallway was dead silent, wind blowing through the cracks in the window, cold against my legs. After a minute, he turned to me, tone serious for once. Having second thoughts, I didn't answer. He reached out and tucked a strand of wind-tousled hair behind my ear. Gentle and natural. I didn't say that just to get under his skin. By the way, I meant it. My heart skipped a beat. What? He looked at me, his eyes dark and steady. If you two were still together, I wouldn't have said anything. But if he's going to make you this miserable, I don't see the point in playing nice. My breath caught. The overhead light was bright, making his eyes look deeper than ever. He was always so playful, so lazy. But right now, he was looking at me like he meant every word. Ilara, I'm interested in you. Not just today. Not just right now. Since the first time I watched you dance. I stared at him, stunned into silence. He smiled, like he didn't want to scare me. His tone lightening again. You don't have to answer right now. And you don't owe me anything just because I stepped in back there. I just wanted you to know. Not every man waits until he's about to lose someone to realize how much they matter. My throat tightened. After a minute, I looked away, voice quiet. Silas, I can't think about this right now. I know, he said immediately. Take all the time you need. I've got plenty. He leaned back against the railing, that lazy smile back on his face. Besides, I'm just getting in line early. That's not exactly unethical, is it? I stared at him, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled a little. He saw it, and his smile softened. There we go. You look much better smiling than you do frowning, Ilara. For my final rehearsal, I couldn't get the second act right. That was the scene where Giselle finds out her lover Albert has lied to her, and her heart breaks, and she dies. The director clapped from the sidelines. Ilara. Emotion. Giselle is devastated. She's breaking apart. You're too calm. I stopped. Breathing hard. Director. Giselle wouldn't scream. She wouldn't yell. Her heart is already dead. So her movements should be light, weightless, like a ghost. When you're that broken, you don't make a sound. The director stared at me. Surprised. She waved a hand. All right. Try it your way. The music started again. I closed my eyes. Let myself sink into that hollow, empty feeling. No tears. No struggle. Just spin after spin. Numb and automatic. Until my toes ached so bad I couldn't feel them. Until everything around me blurred. The music ended. The studio was dead silent. After a long minute, the director sighed softly. Perfect. Ilara. That was perfect. I stood there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my face. Then I heard soft clapping from the back of the room. I looked over. Silas was standing by the last row of seats, his suit jacket over his arm, watching me. His gaze was heavy, warm enough to make my face heat up. I take back what I said earlier. I blinked. He looked at me, slow and sure. You were born to be on that stage. I smiled, about to reply, when my phone lit up. It was a message from Kale in the group chat. Tomorrow night. Usual spot. Kalen's buying drinks, celebrating the IPO approval. Everyone be there. I ignored it. I grabbed a towel to wipe my sweat, about to go change, when another text popped up. It was from Kalen. Private. Come to dinner tomorrow night. Celebrate the IPO approval. Congratulations. I have a performance tomorrow night. I can't make it. Have fun. He replied instantly. Break a leg at your show. My last performance in this city. I thought to myself. On the 18th. Kalen was dragged to the party by Kale. The private room was as noisy as ever, with drinks flowing freely and the card game in full swing. The group of rich guys he'd grown up with laughed and joked. And eventually the conversation turned to him. Look at you, Kalen. All that hard work finally paid off. Now the company's going public. When's the wedding? We've all got our gifts ready. Before, Kalen would have leaned back on the couch, laughed and brushed it off. But tonight, he held his glass tight and didn't say a word. All he could think about was Ilara saying, cold and final, we're breaking up. And Silas, standing right beside her. He leaned back, pulled out his phone. His chat with Ilara was still on the text he'd sent that afternoon. Break a leg at your show. She hadn't replied. His chest felt tight, like there was a stone sitting on it. Kale noticed first, waving a hand in front of his face. Hey, you good? Kalen snapped out of it. Took a drink. Fine. Kale clicked his tongue. Still haven't made up with her. For the record, this is weird. She's never been this mad at you before. Never said anything that final. A pale hand held out a glass of water. Mr. Hale. Lila stood beside him. Voice soft. You've had a lot to drink tonight. Take a break. She paused. Then added. Quiet. Ilara's probably still upset about the house. Girls just need to be smoothed over. That's all. The room went quiet. Kale looked at Lila. Expression unreadable. Kalen didn't notice. He just tugged at his collar. Annoyed. She's just in a mood. She'll get over it. It sounded like he was trying to convince everyone else. It sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Layla nodded. Right. And that Mr. Thorne. She cut herself off, face going pale. I'm sorry, Mr. Hale. I didn't mean to bring him up. Kaylin's hand tightened around his glass. The air went still. Who's Mr. Thorne? Kale asked. Layla looked panicked. Didn't say anything. Kaylin. Kaylin snapped out of it. He checked his watch. 8:40. The show would be starting soon. Kale grinned, thinking of how to apologize to her. Shut up. Kaylin set his glass down and stood up. Where are you going? To the theater. Now. Kale checked his watch. It's already started. Kaylin grabbed his coat. Face dark. Someone laughed. Look at you. Finally panicking. She said she's done with you. And now you're scared. The room laughed. Kaylin didn't reply. He walked out. And Lila ran after him. Mr. Hale. Kaylin turned. Already annoyed. Lila held out his car keys. Voice soft. You've been drinking. Call a car service. He took them. Go home first. Lila stood there. Face pale. But she smiled. Okay. He didn't look at her again. The hallway lights were cold and white. He walked to the elevator. Texting Alara as he went. Don't leave after the show. Wait for me. He stared at the text. That tight, heavy feeling in his chest got worse. Like he was sinking underwater. He got in the car. And pulled a velvet box out of the glove compartment. The engagement ring he'd ordered last year. Back then, they'd been fighting more and more. After one long fight, Alara had looked at him, calm and quiet, and said, Kaylin, are we over? He'd been swamped with work. Stressed out of his mind. But the second she said that, all he could think was I can't lose her. So he'd ordered the ring that day. He'd thought back then that all she wanted was a ring. A promise. A title. He stared at the ring in his hand. The city lights blurred outside the window. The diamond glinting cold and bright. For the first time, he thought he might be too late. Traffic was terrible outside the theater. Kaylin made the driver hurry 3 times. Then finally got out and ran the last block 10 minutes before the show ended. The cold night wind hit his face. He held the velvet box tight in his hand, running so fast he was almost breathless. He never lost his cool. Not like this. Not around Alara. But right now. All he could think was I'm not too late. If I make it. If I tell her. If she sees I'm here. I can fix this. He pushed open the side door to the auditorium. And froze. The stage lights were bright. Alara stood in the center of the light. Her white tulle skirt light as mist. The music swelled, and she rose onto point. Spun. Arched back. So light she looked like she could float away. Kaylin stood in the dark. His breath catching in his throat. The audience was dead silent. Even he, who knew nothing about ballet, could see that fragile, devastating beauty in her performance. Every spin looked like she was leaving something behind forever. He remembered the first time he'd seen her dance. That shock. That awe. That head over heels feeling. Crashing over him all over again. 2 people behind him were talking. Guess we'll have to go to Paris to see Alara perform from now on. Yeah. The exchange list was finalized last week. She's gone for 3 years. Kaylin's blood ran cold. He spun around to stare at them. They flinched under his gaze and went quiet. The curtain fell. The audience erupted in applause. Kaylin didn't wait. He ran for the backstage. The hallway lights were bright white. Silas stood a few feet away, holding a bouquet of white lisianthus, waiting quietly. Kaylin ignored him, ran to the dressing room and threw the door open. Alara had just taken off her stage hairpieces, her long hair falling loose over her shoulders. The lights around the mirror were bright, making her face look pale. She looked up when she saw him. No surprise at all. She just said, very calmly, "What are you doing here?" Kaylin stood in the doorway, chest heaving. He'd rehearsed 100 things to say on the way over, but now his throat was tight, and he couldn't speak. After a long minute, he stepped forward and dropped to one knee. "I know you're going to Paris. You can go as long as you want. I'll come with you. I'll wait for you to come back. Whatever you want." He was talking too fast, desperate, scared she'd leave before he finished. "Alara, we can get married right now. You wanted a promise, a title. I'll give it to you. Right now." He fumbled open the velvet box. The diamond glinted bright under the lights. Kaylin knelt there. The man who was always calm, always in control, his hands shaking. Ilara, don't go. Give me one more chance. Just one. The dressing room was silent. Except for his ragged breathing. Ilara stared at the ring for a long, long time. Long enough that the fragile hope in Kaylin's chest was almost gone. Then she spoke. Soft and steady. Kaylin. These 26 days I stayed weren't me waiting for you to marry me. They were me waiting to finish this performance. I needed to give myself closure. Kaylin's breath stopped. Ilara looked up at him, her gaze clear and unflinching. You once said I didn't have to do anything. That all I had to do was be with you. But in the end, you were drawn to someone who was just like you. Even if Lila had never existed, we would have ended up here anyway. Kaylin froze. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ilara. His voice was shaking, raw with shame as he reached for her. I'm sorry. Don't look at me like that. Let's start over, please. Ilara stepped back. Just one small step. Kaylin's hand hung in the air. That one step was all it took to erase every last chance they had. There was a soft knock on the door. Silas walked in. He picked up Ilara's coat off the back of the chair and draped it over her shoulders. Then he looked up at Kaylin. Calm and firm. Mr. Hale. She just danced a full 2-hour performance. Let her rest. Kaylin stood there, numb. In that moment, he knew, clear and final, he had lost Ilara. Forever. Kaylin didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room. The ring on the table in front of him. Next to it was the Paris exchange contract he'd found in her desk drawer. The paper was crumpled from him squeezing it so hard. The date at the bottom was the day they'd gone to look at the house. From that day on, Ilara had already chosen her future, and he'd been standing in that sunlit room, giving her room away to another woman. The sky turned from dark to gray to bright morning light. He didn't move. For a second, he thought about driving to her apartment, begging her not to go. But he knew she was right. He'd still loved her, but a part of him had strayed. He'd promised her the world, but the love he'd given her had turned sour, too tarnished to give her any more. He went to the airport anyway. He stood far away, watching her hug her family and friends, then walk through security without looking back. The airport was crowded. The boarding announcements blared over the speakers, cold and impersonal. The sky outside was gray. A plane cut through the clouds, leaving a long white trail that faded away almost immediately. Kaylin stood there, his eyes burning. He sank slowly to the floor, covering his face with his hands. People walked past him, in a hurry. Some were meeting loved ones. Some were saying goodbye. He'd always thought Ilara would forgive him. She'd loved him for so many years. How could she just walk away? His phone buzzed. He looked down. It was the architect. Mr. Hale. Sorry to bother you. You asked about changing the south-facing room back to a dance studio. Should we confirm that? Kaylin stared at the text for a long time. Long enough for the screen to go dark. He saw Ilara again, standing in that doorway, holding those 2 wood samples, comparing them so carefully. She'd planned to dance in that room for years, and he'd been the one to take that future away from her. After a long time, he replied, change it back to the dance studio. Thank you. The architect replied right away. Got it. Paris was colder than home. Ilara pushed her luggage out of the arrivals gate, the wind tangling her long hair. She stood in the crowd, pulling her scarf up higher around her neck. Then someone took her suitcase from her hand. Silas stood in front of her, that same lazy smile on his face, in a black wool coat, dark eyes warm. He'd clearly been waiting a while. He looked down at her, didn't ask any questions, just took her suitcase, and smiled. Long flight. Ilara, what do you want for dinner tonight? Escargot, and a glass of hot mulled wine, to warm you up. The wind blew across the square, lifting the hem of her coat. The streetlights flickered on one by one. People walked across the bridge, back and forth. No one looked back.